Hello everyone, my name is Gretchen and this is Cover Art, a series where I talk about video games I'm currently playing while doing my makeup at the same time. Today's game that we are going to be talking about is a game called Inscryption. It actually just came out last year in October, so it's still relatively new. It was developed by Daniel Mullins Games and published by Devolver Digital, which I'm pretty sure we've talked about on here before. Inscryption has a really dark, grungy, inky feel to it. It is a game that is separated into 3 acts total, and for us it took us roughly 14 hours to beat, more or less. So what is Inscryption? Well, it's a lot of things, to be honest. So you start the game on a black screen with a voice off screen that says, well, okay, let's see what's on this thing. So already it's kind of a weird start to a game. You open up the main menu and there's actually no new game buttons. Probably the first thing that you're going to notice. The only option you have as far as getting into the game is to continue, which is unique to say the least. Kind of give you an idea that this is not going to be a straightforward game whatsoever. I mean, yeah, it goes in with super weird vibes. You enter into the game and suddenly you are sitting at a wooden table in a darkly lit room across from what seems like a demonic entity of sorts. It's really creepy. It talks to you in distorted tones, and it has these really whirly, swirly yellow eyes that are really unsettling. The whole game is unsettling. I think that's a really good way to describe it, just right off the bat. You're greeted into the game by this entity that says, oh, a new player, I haven't seen anyone in a while. Okay, great. And this thing proceeds to show you how to play a card game. The card game itself is very much like Magic the Gathering, where you have resources that you need to spend in order to play certain cards. So you'll start off with this thing showing you the basic rules of the game and how to play. Once you understand the basic idea of the game, the thing across from you says basically, okay, now that you know how to play, we're going to get started for real now, and now that you know the rules of the game, we're going to play for real now, and you only have X amount of lives. I think you start with 2 lives. Before you on the table rolls out this long parchment scroll, and basically you're suddenly playing a tabletop RPG as well. You have a little player token that makes decisions on how to proceed through this forest-like environment, and the entity across from you narrates this as you go. For as creepy as he is, he's not a bad storyteller, I'll give him that. As you proceed through the path that's set before you by this entity, this demon thing, you will encounter different little fights, little choices to make that help you gather new cards and add them to your deck, because it's also a deck building game. You don't just get a deck to start with. You kind of form things around the cards that you want. You can power up the cards that you have. Sometimes that requires sacrificing other cards, but in the end you just have to decide what kind of deck you want to play, which gets easier as you go along and as you learn what the paths are like. Now your goal in this is to actually reach the end of each different area that you're traveling through in this scroll on your table. You start with a forest. At one point there's a swamp. Every time you reach the end of a map, you are faced with a boss or a challenger, and to proceed, obviously, you must defeat them in the card game, but they're significantly harder than the enemies you'll face along the road. So then what's the end goal here? Well, the end goal is to make it through all 3 stages of this tabletop RPG you're suddenly playing so that you can reach the final boss, which is the thing sitting across from you. So like I mentioned previously, you're given lives. If you lose a game, then you lose a life, is basically all it surmounts to. And then if you lose all your lives, you lose the game, which when I say lose, I mean you die. That's not that big of a spoiler, but you're playing for realsies here with this guy. If his demon aesthetic didn't already speak to that at all. But if you're not, every time you lose a life, you gain another. As a new player, you basically just keep coming through and fighting this guy and playing this game with him. It's a very messed up game. And the game doesn't explicitly tell you that that's what happens, but he kind of makes comments throughout like, oh, I really had high hopes for that last player, or the last person I faced wasn't that big of a challenge for me. I hope you can do better. Stuff like that he says to you that makes you realize, oh, I'm a different character now. I'm a different person now. So that's the card game aspect of it. But wait, there's more. Not only are you playing this tabletop Magic the Gathering RPG with this guy, you are also actually playing an escape room game. That's right, you can stand up and look around the room after a certain point. As the entity says, he's no stickler. He doesn't want to keep you chained up there. You know, he'll just kill you if you lose. But anyways, if you want to walk around his room, go ahead, just don't touch his stuff. And when he says don't touch his stuff, that's the game telling you to touch all of his stuff. He doesn't do anything about it, so it's like whatever. So around the cabin, once you get up from the table, you realize you're in this darkly lit cabin. There are a variety of different puzzles for you to solve. Things that are locked behind containers that will actually lead to stronger cards or ways of potentially getting out of this hellscape you find yourself in. So yeah, good luck figuring all that out and getting out of this awful room. So everything that I have just described to you has all been just part 1 or Act 1 of the game. You might be thinking, what? Act 1, what are you talking about? Well, this game is a lot longer than it'll lead you to believe right at the beginning. Or maybe not so much longer as it is more complicated. Because it is definitely a complicated game. Like I mentioned already with the very beginning of the game, you get these unsettling or creepy vibes that make you think like, what's going on here? There's something weird happening. Why are some of the cards talking to me? You know, just little things like that. No big deal. Not only are they talking to me, but they act like they know each other. What's going on there? Strange. I also wanted to mention that you never actually see your own character. Like I said before, if you lose the game too many times in one round, then you're game over. But everything is in a first-person perspective, and your controls are limited to where the game allows you to move around in the room. So you can't just freely walk around. You kind of make sharp turns and then move forward or backwards or make a right turn or a left turn. It's really precise movement. So yeah, all of that is just Act 1. That's Act 1 in a nutshell. Creepy dude, creepy game, creepy room, creepy cards. Act 2 will pick up as soon as you escape the room. And then from there on, the game takes a really interesting turn. So right away you'll see actually in between the different acts of the game, there's this like interlude intermission sort of section that goes on, and it's a different media. So the game is mixed media, meaning there's not just animated and 3D modeled components, but there's also real world components in a different style. And basically what these little intermissions do is give you an idea of what's going on surrounding the game in the real world. So what's going on with this game, who was that voice that you hear right at the beginning and probably already forgot about, because let's face it, there was a lot going on in that dark, creepy room by itself. At least I forgot about it. And yeah, it's just this really layered story that's going on around this game and all the characters in it. So that's as much as I'm going to say as far as gameplay goes, because I wouldn't want to spoil anything else. It's really a game that you should go into pretty blind. You shouldn't know too much about it. And a lot of people will only go so far as to say it's an escape room card game, which isn't wrong. I mean, it's what it is. How do I make such a mess doing these videos? Literally, I just dropped something and I'm afraid to go get it. Personally, you know, if someone came up to me and was like, hey, how would you, in your super professional opinion, describe the game Inscryption, how would you categorize it into genres? I would probably call it a mystery thriller. I think without giving too much more away, that's what I would call it. It's got overall really creative gameplay and a really interesting story. The story is told to you in a lot of different ways, whether that's finding it out for yourself through puzzles or learning more about what's going on through the intermissions. I want to try fake eyelashes, but at the same time, my eyelashes are always, like, mine are really long anyways, so I don't know if it's worthwhile, but maybe I'll give it a go one day. I will consider it. So yeah, anyways, the mixed media of the game really lends well to the atmosphere of it. It's a really intriguing way of telling a story, especially in this game. It's a really fascinating way of telling the story. And it continues to kind of create this atmosphere of like, what the fuck's going on in this? What's up with this game? What's happening? The game doesn't have a particularly large cast of characters. It's pretty an intimate group of people. There's a really specific conflict going on within the very few characters that are in the world. Let's say that. I am no good at contouring, and yet here I thought I could do it on my nose. It's not too bad, I think. Anywho, you learn more about the characters and their conflict, and you're kind of thrown into their seedy underlying plots and kind of become a pawn in their own wishes to kind of become the most powerful being among them. Mainly, I'm talking about 4 different characters that run the world you're playing in, so to speak. The art style for the game, while in the 3D portion of things, does remain pretty grungy and dark throughout, although sometimes you'll have more green color palettes or more blue color palettes, and they'll kind of change up that way. It really does just kind of stay inky and grungy. I don't know how else to describe it, honestly. But in Act 2, you do get a portion of gameplay that is completely different. Yeah, that's really all I'll say about it. Really mixes up the art style and the overall aesthetic the game's making. But it's still unsettling, don't worry. The characters throughout will make tiny comments that will kind of make you double take and go, what? What did you say? What's going on? Heh? And the game kind of leaves you to piece things together. I would say this game is definitely made by someone who knows how, I hate how I'm about to say this, but they know how gamers think. Whoever made this game, Daniel Mullins, he knew exactly how to write the story in a way that makes players think that they're in control at all, when really it is a pretty straightforward path. So while there are different choices you can make, it's not so much how it'll affect the end of the game so much as how long it takes you to get there. It'll really egg you towards making the crazier decision. And you'll know what I mean when you play the game. There are some crazy decisions you have to make. Things that make even the characters across from you go, oh my god, I didn't think you'd actually do that. From the card game itself to the puzzles that you're solving around the room are overall really wonderful and just really well done. The types of puzzles you find scattered around are pretty much the same throughout the game, but they definitely vary in difficulty. All in all, it is a really good game, and if you like playing really any kind of game at all, I would say go for it. It's really fun, it's really interesting, and it gets kind of buck wild, so you're in for a good time. Inscryption really is a super fun game if you're really interested in good storytelling and just unsettling things overall. It's pretty good for that. If you try it out, let me know in the comments below and let me know what you think of my makeup. But I hope you have a good rest of your day or night or whatever comes next for you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.